On one side, people have been using venom for thousands of years. We need such technology to truly understand what's happening within a venom and how the venom then acts on different physiological pathway in human beings. We're speaking about something extremely ancient. And when you think about it, some of the most ancient multicellular organisms that we know of, for example jellyfish, are fundamentally venomous. And it is one of the main components of the first forms of life. Definitely.
Well, thank you, Michel, for joining me. I actually watched your TED Talk that you gave about a year ago, right? And yeah, just, well, I mean, I think most people are kind of blown away by how we're only just starting to really break into venom as like a useful application, and just research it fully. But I want to get into like the uses and the applications for it and your work and your history with venom, like as we go on. But I suppose, would you be able to give us a sort of introduction to what exactly it is? How do we define it from, say, like a poison or like any other toxic chemical? What makes venom venom?
Right, so yes, first of all, it's very important to make that difference between poison and venom. A lot of people use both terms interchangeably, while actually there is a bit of a difference. So a poison is essentially a product that is toxic when ingested, when rubbed on your skin. So basically, if it enters your body one way or the other, that product will have a negative effect on your health and your well-being. Mm-hmm. A venom is more specific. So if you want, a venom can be classed as a kind of poison, but it is a lot more specific than just that. A venom is a substance that is toxic when injected into an animal, into an organism. Now, venom is actually produced by an animal to usually either deter or to incapacitate another animal. Venom is usually produced within a venom gland, and so it is also injected with a very sharp end. So you can think about the fangs of a snake. You can think about the sting of a scorpion. You can think about the spine of certain fish, on their back. So there is always that idea of having a sharp object that will inject that toxic compound deep within the other organism. And so that venom will be used to either incapacitate a prey or incapacitate an enemy, a predator.
How different is that split? How many venomous animals are using it to hunt, and how many is it just sort of like there if they need it in defense?
Very often it will have actually a dual purpose. If you already have a weapon that is excellent at incapacitating or killing prey, well, it's quite likely that the same weapon can be used for you to defend yourself against a potential enemy. Mm-hmm. And then you have some other organisms that do not need venom to actually catch a prey, or so to just sustain themselves, but they will have venom in order to defend themselves. A very good example of that is the honeybee. The honeybee does not need its venom to actually catch prey. The honeybee feeds on the nectar of plants, but it will use its venom purely for defending the community, to defend the hive. So their venom, of course, has evolved specifically to deter predator rather than kill really other organism. Their venom has evolved to be very painful and to really just give that very bad immediate experience to the predator. So it doesn't have to kill, it just has to be really, really painful.
Do Do they use them against like other insects? Like, do you have like bee and wasps fight, and could they kill each other, or is it bigger mammals like us?
Oh, no, you would actually see bees and wasps, for example, fighting. So you could find some species of wasp, particularly hornets, that are specialized in attacking bees, and they will feed on bees. And so bees will try and defend themselves by attacking the hornets. The hornets can actually sting as well the bees to try and kill them and eat them. So here, in that example, you have a very good battle between an organism that has evolved the venom to kill its prey, the hornet, and on the other side, an organism that has evolved the venom to actually just defend the community, and that's the honeybee. And they will actually fight, and it's a constant evolutionary fight between one side and the other to try and have the most advanced weapon that will give you an edge, on the competition. So there is that constant battle between the two.
Oh, I'd love to get into more about evolution and especially co-evolution of venom, because I think like that it seems so unique and so fascinating. But before we leave bees, I like the idea of venomous animals. I mean, we're very, very focused on what happens to the victim, what happens when we get stung, what happens when we get bitten. But like with bees, they can die a lot of the time, right? If they sting someone, that's kind of like their last hurrah. Is that how is that? How did that even develop? And is that a common thing?
So no, it is actually not common. It's something that could only evolve in animals that live in very, very large communities, in animals that have kind of organized caste, where actually saving the whole nest, saving the whole community is more important than saving just that individual. So in a massive honeybee hive that contains maybe, 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 bees, losing a couple of dozen to defend that whole community is a trade-off that makes sense. For a single organism that lives individually, independently, its whole life, well, to die because it's trying to defend its nest doesn't make any sense, because that's it. The line just stops there. The genetic line stops there. But in a hive, all those workers are related. All those workers have the same mother, and they are all sisters. So if they're all sisters, that idea of sacrifice kind of makes sense. To sacrifice a few in order to defend and assure the perennity, the continuity of the line through generation makes complete sense then. It's a sacrifice that allows the survival of the whole group.
So it must really take a lot within a bee's body then to produce the venom to defend itself, if it could be the last sort of thing that it's even able to do.
Yes, it's actually a very interesting thing, just that how bee venom evolved and how the bee venom gland evolved as well. In fact, in a bee colony, only the queen is capable of reproducing. The workers can't. And so in workers, what we have, and in the queen as well, what we have is that we have a modification of the reproduction organs into a stinging apparatus. And this is also why they die when they sting. So what happens is that the venom system has evolved so completely for defense, no other purpose. So the venom gland is attached on one end to the sting, yes, and on the other side, the venom gland is still attached to the gut, just because it's part of the internal organs of the bee. Now, the barb, so the sting of a bee, has evolved purely for defense, and that means that it is like a harpoon. It has little dents in it, and once it enters like an arrow, then it stays in. You will not be able to get rid of it that easily. And that is very good for defense purpose, because it means more pain, longer, and a more efficient delivery of the venom. And to make that delivery of venom even more efficient, what happens is that the structures that hold the sting to the venom gland are very, very strong and hard. The structure that hold the venom gland to the rest of the gut actually fairly strong as well. And that means that when the sting enters in, let's say, your skin, it will be stuck there. The bee will pull to try and fly away. That sting will keep the venom sac attached as well, and that venom sac will continue to pump venom into you, even though it's completely detached from the bee. And usually, part of the gut will remain with the venom sac as well, which means that the bee will die because parts of its gut is gone. So it is an adaptation for defense, but the trade-off is that survival is very unlikely.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an evolutionary step that makes sense, as I've mentioned earlier, purely in the sense of a community, not for an individual that would live a solitary life.
Where the sacrifice is worth it, where it's for the greater good, sort of thing. Are there any other examples of that in the insect world?
Yes. Well, most social insects will show some sense of sacrifice. Of course, we can speak about ants, but ants, bees, and wasps all belong to the same group, which is the group of the Hymenoptera, which means the small waist insects, because they have a tiny little waist. So they're all related, and they've all formed caste. Okay, so you will find very similar behavior in those three groups. But then, for example, in spiders, you will find some social spiders where actually you have a few females that will take care of the babies. You have some other females that will take care of the defense of the nest overall. So you have actually structures like this where younger specimen will take care of food capture. So they will focus on capturing prey for the whole colony and share that food with the whole colony, while some more mature specimens that are larger will take care of the defense of the colony. So their role will be to fend off any kind of attack from other organisms, while some others will actually mind the babies. So you can actually find some sort of structure in many groups like that. We have, I don't know, in centipedes, which are very archaic kind of organisms that have remained unchanged for the best of the past 400 million years. We have actually mothers that take great care of their babies, and the babies will actually stay in the chamber with their mother for up to 6 months, 9 months. So much so that actually when they hatch from their eggs, they are larvae that are incapable of moving. And this developmental pattern is possible simply because the mother is there to care for them and to defend them, because the mother is highly venomous. The mother can actually defend them for several months and therefore give time for those babies to develop into adolescents. And it's only when they're adolescent that they will then start to have their own life. And we even wonder if when they're adolescent, they don't help their mother take care of the next batch of babies. And so, you have that intrinsec complexity in a lot of arthropods, a lot of bug communities.
Right. So yeah, absolutely. You think of social animals, even mostly, we think of primates, I guess, but then it filters down to all of these. Well, actually, I say it filters up because these animals, they haven't really changed much for hundreds of millions of years, right?
Yes, and that's something that is quite fascinating as well. I'll take the example of the centipede as well, because I worked on the venom system of centipedes for a long time. And something that's fascinating is that we basically have fossils of centipedes that are about 420 million years old. So they're extremely, extremely old. They predate the rise of dinosaurs by hundreds of millions of years. And we see the exact same structure in living centipedes. In fact, we are capable to assign a specific family that still exists to this day to those 420 million years old fossils, meaning that those organisms have almost not changed for close to 500 million years. And if they haven't changed, it's because they are so efficient and so good at what they do that they don't need to change. So being archaic is not a proof of failed, design or capacities or anything like this. No, simplicity or remaining simplicity means that those functions were so good from the beginning that they never really had to change. They are as efficient now as they were 400 million years ago, and they've remained efficient through all the cataclysmic events that occurred during those 400 million years, which is incredible.
And I mean, does that make us think that with every species there's a peak point, there's a point where, well, this is the best that it can get for the environment that we currently have?
I actually don't know for this. I don't know the answer to this. I wouldn't think so that I wouldn't think that there is a peak. There is just something that is sufficiently efficient that it doesn't need to change. That selective pressure does not apply so drastically that it will change tremendously over time. But in a specific environment at a specific time, it could change very rapidly if it is required, if it is needed. But in the case of centipedes, modifying the first pair of legs and turning that first pair of legs into venom claws that actually produce that extremely potent neurotoxic, anemotoxic, and cytotoxic venom was like the right combination from the beginning.
So, I mean, your work, you're obviously deep in the venom. How much do you look at how venom evolved in these animals? Like, did it start off really quite simple chemical structures, and now it's completely different, or is it very, very much the same as it was?
Well, it's very difficult to actually know what venom were made of 500 million years ago. Because of course we don't have any fossil trace of those venom. So it's very tricky to know, but the first thing that's quite interesting and fundamental is that venom is almost as old as life, because venom is essentially one of the most efficient way to acquire food, and one of the best way to deter the guys that are trying to eat you. So it has evolved extremely early as well in the history of life. And although we do not know exactly, we think that it's quite possible that even very early multicellular organisms started to produce toxin and find ways to inject those toxins into other organisms. So we're speaking about something extremely ancient. And when you think about it, some of the most ancient multicellular organisms that we know of, for example, jellyfish, are fundamentally venomous. Many corals are venomous. Sea anemones are venomous.
So it developed when life was mostly in the sea, underwater.
Yes. Oh, yes. And it is one of the main components of the first forms of life. Definitely. Jellyfish are extremely simple. In fact, the only simpler multicellular life form that we know are sponges. So sponges are the only thing that are more ancient and more simple than jellyfish. And jellyfish are already venomous. And we are now realizing that actually, even among sponges, we find sponges that actually produce toxins and are carnivorous. Some have been found quite recently, in the past 5 to 10 years, and that means that even the most basic multicellular organisms that have been present for the past 600 million years or so produce toxins and use those toxins to kill their food.
This reminds me of something that I was listening to not that long ago. It was like a fish, like, you know, a very archaic, as you were saying, fish that lives at the bottom of the ocean that is one of the first to have known to produce poisonous slime. So is that kind of in the same sort of realm, like just having chemical compounds in your arsenal to release both for predation and protection, and that goes back to just way to the beginning?
Yes, I think that it's something that's extremely ancient and that can be found in many organisms as we go back into time. Many organisms have lost secondarily their venom system as well. That's something that happens as well. So a venom system, when not required, can actually disappear as well. For example, snakes that feed on eggs. So those snakes produce either no venom at all or a venom that has completely lost all its potency. There are sea snakes like this that are closely related to cobras. They belong to the same main families, the elapids. Well, those sea snakes do not produce toxins anymore, while their closest cousins do. But their venom glands are completely atrophied because in the recent past, when we say recent, of course, it's not 10 or 20 years ago, but a fair few million years ago, those organisms have switched their diet from fish to fish eggs. When you catch a fish, you need to be able to actually paralyze that prey as fast as possible. A fish egg is not going to run away from you.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't need that venom anymore. So why produce it? And then that venom system just atrophied and disappeared. Venom actually is a substance that is metabolically expensive to produce. It takes energy. It requires energy and time. And therefore, if it's not useful, it's also one of the first things to go. Mm-hmm. Because there is no need to use all that energy in keeping that arsenal in you when actually it's not required.
Do you have any idea of what it's like as an animal to bite and inject a victim or an attacker with venom? What do you think the animal, the snake, the spider, experiences when they do that?
Of course, I don't know. I know more what it is to be on the receiving end of the bite. But we shouldn't forget that in many cases, especially if it's for defense, the use of venom is also linked to a very high stress level. Mm-hmm. When an animal decides to use its venom to defend itself, it means that it decides to use one of its most precious substance available to try and save its life. So it's a decision, because we're speaking about decision making here. It's a decision that is heavy of consequences for the animal, and that can only happen really in extremely stressful situation. So there is that side of the bite or envenomation world. The animal is experiencing a lot of stress.
Like we get a rush of adrenaline, and that spikes cortisol, and we go through all of these this experience when we're, say, in a fight or running away or something. That you think that they have that same.
Some of them, yes, definitely would experience, that peak of stress as well. Now, I cannot tell you how stressed a bee can get, or how stressed a wasp can get, or an ant, or a centipede. But they definitely react to certain stimuli and certain situations. And for example, we know that centipedes can take up to several weeks or months to replenish their venom store.
Whoa.
And so that means that using it for defense purpose means that this organism then will be vulnerable for a very long period of time. Mm-hmm. So although it's an almost instant decision, it's a very important decision, And something must happen in those animals, when they have to make that decision. There is, in fact, a very interesting concept that we call venom metering, or the venom optimization hypothesis, that I worked on for quite a while and that I'm still working on. That is quite fascinating. We've realized that most organisms use their venom in different ways depending on different scenario and different situation.
Wow.
So this has been shown in spiders, in ants, in centipedes, in scorpions, in some snakes. So I'm going to tell you about centipedes because I have demonstrated it in centipedes. But it's similar in other organisms as well. So what we've seen is that a centipede will actually attack a prey depending on the amount of venom that is available in its venom glands. So if now I take a centipede and I extract all its venom, and that I try and give him a prey that he usually eats, he will not eat it. If I wait about 8 hours or 12 hours, and I present it with a big prey and a small prey, let's say a very big locust and a small locust of the same species, it will go for the small locust, but not for the big one. That means that centipede somehow knows, although I don't like the term knows because it feels like consciousness when we say that, but that centipede somehow knows that he can tackle the small one but not the big one.
So it's able to make a calculation, so it can sense what it's got at its glands, sort of like if we're full in our tummies or something.
Exactly.
Like that.
And then the thing is that if I wait 24 hours, then it will disregard the small one and go for the big one, because it knows this time that if it's already using some of the venom that has been produced in the past 24 hours, better go for the big one, because the result, the outcome is better.
So they can choose how much venom they release when they make the kill, or it's sort of like an all or nothing?
So it seems that some organisms at least can control how much venom they will inject, but not just that. They will then, when they catch that prey, they will not inject venom randomly into the prey. They will preferably inject venom where it is most efficient, so they can use less of it. That means that if you take 50 centipedes and you give a locust to each of them, you'll notice that 2/3 to 3/4 of them will actually inject venom either in the thorax or the head, but not in the abdomen or in the limb, while the head and thorax of a locust represent only 1/4 of the whole length of its body. So if it was random, centipedes would tend to bite more the abdomen than the rest of the body. And we've realized that it's not the case at all. They actually attack the head or the chest a lot more than the abdomen. And when you think about it, that makes sense. They produce a neurotoxic venom that attacks the central nervous system. Where is the central nervous system located in a locust? In the head and the chest, not the abdomen. Similar things have been noticed with ants, spiders, scorpions, and it seems that they really optimize the amount of venom that they use, which is fascinating. Imagine that whole decision making in an animal that has remained unchanged for 400 million years and has a brain that is not even really a brain.
It's like a computer almost, like it's been programmed to just make these quick-fire decisions, like a yes-no spreadsheet, and then it can assess, do I have enough venom in me for this? Yes, go.
Yes, it's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating to try and understand how they can function.
How different are the different species in terms of their venom glands? Do they all sort of function very similar ways?
So that's actually also very interesting, because a lot of those venom systems have actually evolved independently. So they've evolved at different time in different organisms.
Oh, wow.
Yes, but because they all fulfill a similar function, well, their design is often quite similar, because there is only a handful of ways to produce toxin and inject that toxin into your enemies. So, in fact, they seem superficially very, very similar, but they have evolved often completely independently at completely different times. When you cut the venom gland of a spider, a centipede, a bee, a snake, and you just look at them, now to the untrained eye, they look amazingly similar.
So there was no one lucky common ancestor which all venomous species came from.
No.
That's amazing.
Come with me and don't sting me. No, there.
Oh my God! Is that how you have to pick them up?
Yeah, I'm trying to be careful because this guy is actually a bit mental, and normally I don't mind handling them and all this, but he's a little bit mental right now. So
is he a bit grumpy? Wow!
Yeah,
oh,
look at that. So
that's going in.
This is what they sting with. So right there, the venom is produced in the vesicle right there. Then you have
okay, so it's right there.
That collects all that venom and bring it to a little opening just below the tip of that needle there. And so that needle is the bit that finishes in your skin when you get stung by a scorpion.
So if you were to cut that bit off, it's not got any venom defense?
No, then it would completely lose it. But you see, the thing is that you can't do that if you want to keep the animal alive, because in fact, this is part of their belly. A lot of people think that scorpions have a tail, but this is not a tail. This is in fact an extension of the abdomen.
Wow.
And that means that the anus is located just at the base of the venom vesicle. And so if you cut that, you essentially cut their anus off. And of course, that means that the animal will die somehow, like, you know.
So that venom gland is like so intertwined into its entire digestive system, its whole body, it's everything.
And usually, of course, venom systems have evolved from parts of either the digestive system or some sort of tools that were used in order to handle food. Let it be, the saliva glands and the fangs of a snake, which are linked together, or the forcipule of a centipede, which are the first pair of legs closest to the mouth. So they're the ones that were always involved in holding on the food when centipedes were eating. So they're the ones that evolved the venom system.
Right.
I'll show you another one here. Come here. Oh.
I'm still recording this. No.
And we have tarantula right here.
Wow. And where are her venom glands?
So I'm going to show you this now. So you see, I'm just going to hold her up at the side and under, I'm going to take a pen. So you might see actually just under here and there. These are the venom fangs. I don't know how close I can get, You can actually see the fangs now quite clearly.
This is like the closest that I'll ever get because she could just can see the camera.
And now what I'm going to do is that I'm just going to slide a pen under her fangs.
Oh, they're huge.
And now you can see the venom fangs. So this is what the tarantula would bite with.
With how much venom is coming out in terms of, a couple of drops, or if nothing like that?
That really depends of the species. So a spider like that can actually produce about the equivalent of a raindrop of venom. And this is already quite a lot. In comparison, a black widow, for example, would produce about 200 times less than a tarantula like this, and up to about 150,000 times less than a viper. So the potency of the black widow venom is pound per pound is incredible. It's incredibly potent.
They're little things, so they got to have stronger stuff. Wow. Thank you for showing me those. That's amazing.
And so she's a very, very gentle spider.
Yeah.
A real little darling.
Do you think she recognizes you? Can she sort of sense you?
So I wouldn't say she recognizes me. What I would say is that we've reached a point where she does not consider human contact as being a threat to
I
her at
see.
all.
Okay.
This is what you want to get with a lot of those animals. They will never be attached to you, like as such, but you can get to that stage where they actually don't consider you as a potential threat.
Mm-hmm.
And as such, it's not stressful to them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
They don't look for a defense mechanism. They're fine. You see, I don't have to do anything. She's just happily standing on my hand. My hand is warm. So
she's just chilling.
She doesn't have to walk anywhere, just like if it was a warm stone or a warm piece of timber in a jungle. She's happy there.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't happy. She could bite me. She has venom. She has the fangs. She can run away, but nope.
She's all good. Venom has really allowed all of these creatures that could be so vulnerable to just being stomped on or, eaten up to survive.
Yes, absolutely. And then with all those beautiful display that we can see in many species, when we speak about the black widow, of course, the red color, for example, all those aposematic color, as we call them, those warning colors, that basically tell other organisms, don't even try, don't even think about it, because you're going to regret it. It's not going to end up well for you. A rattlesnake, that is capable of making that sound to warn much bigger animals, much bigger mammals. Just tell them, don't
even bother
close to me, because it's a bad deal. So don't try. Quite fascinating,
Very, so fascinating. And you're so passionate about it. It's amazing. I love it.
So if you didn't have a scale to show you that one is a lot bigger than the other and so on, you could sometimes just say it's all the same. But no, it's just that the evolutionary path that led to those is constrained by the same factors. Produce what kills your enemies or your prey as fast as possible. That is usually neurotoxin. Help with the digestion of that prey. This is usually cytotoxic compound that will dissolve flesh, or that will interact with blood and the blood properties. So at the end of the day, a centipede, a wasp, an ant, or a snake will actually produce compounds that are fairly similar, and the organs that are going to produce those compounds are quite similar as well in their structure.
Because they've got it right, like this is the most efficient and best way for them to do it, and it seems so sort of unique in the evolutionary path to have cropped up all of these times. I mean, what could we even compare it to? Is it, because the only thing that's popping into my mind is like, fangs and teeth and stuff like that, which can be a defense. Well, they're just another form of a weapon, right? That you find across many, many different species from all the different groups, and they work a similar way. But this is obviously so much more complex and interesting. And they do so many different things all at once in the body, right?
Yes, and that's also something that I think is really fascinating. You see, venom systems are so fundamental to the survival of organisms that there is a constant war between the prey and the predator. That war is on for the past millions and millions of years, and it's often through wars that actually the greatest innovation occurs, and this is because there is not many other acts that are as important as that act of survival in the middle of a war. And this is what animals around us are living on a daily basis. So if we take a snake and its favorite prey, any kind of rodent, what will happen is that those snakes, through generation, constantly develop new mutations. Those rodents, on the other side, constantly develop new mutation as well. So, for example, all rodents that are not able to run very fast will tend to be eaten first. And that means that, well, at the end, you have a positive selection for rodents that are capable of outpacing the snake. But then the snake then will be under pressure to try and become faster as well. The snakes that have those abilities to move faster will have better chances of survival than the ones that are slower, and so on. So there is a constant race. And that is true with venom as well. The prey will develop resistance to the venom, so venom has to be tuned to still kill, those prey, and then the prey in time will become resistant to that new tuned venom, so the venom will get somewhat more specialized then, and so on. So you end up with millions of years of fine-tuning to reach that very specific effect that you see now. And that very specific effect is still being tuned right now. So it's a very dynamic process as well. So we see those differences everywhere around us, and it's fascinating.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier the sort of the wasp and bee, going against each other and constantly getting better. How do you track that throughout the years? How can you see? Because earlier you said, we've only got the venom glands, I guess, to go off of to see how they're changing, and how are you looking into that?
So for this, we can actually look at biogeographical patterns. So we, for example, of course, Central America is a fantastic example for this because it's a land bridge that occurred quite recently. So we had North America and South America that were separated, and then that land bridge of Central America where species from North America and South America then kind of meet. So it's quite fascinating for this. And so you can see that depending on biogeographical pattern, you'll see venom variations within the same family of organisms, sometimes within the same species. So there are certain species, something that I'll start to work on very soon with scorpions in North Africa. There are certain species that would have different venom if they're living in a plain, close to sea level, or on top of a mountain. They're the same species, but they're feeding on completely different prey. And they have been for thousands and thousands of years. And that means that venom is ever so slightly different now. It has adapted through selective pressure to the prey that are available in that specific environment. So this, of course, can have massive implication in terms of human health. If we develop an antivenom for a scorpion, we decide to develop a new antivenom for a specific scorpion, and we use only scorpions that are coming from the plain, the coastal plain, to develop that antivenom. And then I go into the mountains and I get stung by what is supposed to be the same species. But that species actually, for the past 2.5 million years, has been living up mountains and has been feeding on different organisms and has a different venom. That antivenom that is available, although it's for that species, is inefficient because it's actually based on the toxin of the sea level scorpion, not the mountain one. Not the mountain.
So similarly, that the same animal can live in two different areas of the world and have completely different diets and therefore poo different things, stuff like that. They also produce venom that's suitable for that environment.
Yeah. So this, for example, is a massive reason, or a big reason for massive death in the Indian subcontinent with the Russell viper. The Russell viper has different population living at different altitude and in different environments, from the Himalayan hillsides down to Bangladesh, and so really those flood-prone coastal plains.
Mm-hmm.
And the venom is very, very different from one area to the other.
In terms of the evolution of venom, then, do you find that the speed of it or the changes happen in those kind of like localized situations where something is the sort of promoter of a change, or is it generally quite like a smooth development over millions of years?
So I'm sure that some other researchers would know a lot more about this than me. What I can tell you is that it's something that I'm trying to look at with spiders. And of course, spiders have a fairly short generation time, so it's a lot easier than with snakes, for example. And we have noticed in our lab that venom can vary greatly and quite rapidly between different cohort of spiders coming from different microenvironments. So what are the factors really driving those variations? We're not 100% sure yet. This will require a lot of analysis, and we're trying to work on this, but it's taking a few years to really sort out. But definitely we've been surprised by the range of variation changes, and by how quick it can happen.
Yeah. Would you be able to identify a species, whether it's venomous or not? Not whether it's venomous or not. Would you be able to identify what species it is based on the venom, or because there are these variations across the same animals?
So for some venomous animals at least, each species and even each population within that species will have its own venom signature. We even wonder if it's not almost on an individual basis for some arthropods, so for some bugs. Of course, there is a common base, for the whole species or the whole family. But then, if you really look into details, we're wondering if you could not even recognize different individuals based on their venom signature.
What?
We're wondering if now we decide to give a specific diet to one specimen and a specific diet of another kind of diet to one of his brother or sister, if actually we'd be able to recognize their venom signature then.
Wow.
It's not something we've done so far.
Makes sense.
But it's something we are trying to do now. We are really wondering about this.
Wow, that is so cool. That would kind of make sense, right? With every other animal, whatever we produce is kind of to a small degree based on our environments and what we put into our bodies.
Exactly. So it is essentially how our function would be impacted by our environment, and so how having a very specific environment and a very specific genetic makeup, so those two combined, the specific genetic makeup with a specific environment, gives you a specific identity. And we're wondering if it's something that we can actually find in venom as well.
Oh, that is so cool. I'll check back in a few years when you when you figured it out. That is so interesting. Can you how easy is it to identify what animals are venomous? I mean, like with snakes, you said there are some that still have the glands, but they're not in use or anything like that. Is it actually quite difficult?
It is. We still have so much work to do on that front to actually really know which organisms are venomous and which ones are not. A couple of weeks ago, so in early July 2020, I think that a team of researchers just published new results, was it in Science or Nature, showing that a new group of amphibians is actually venomous. And we're speaking about a major group of vertebrate organism, not an obscure type of bug, living in the middle of a jungle lost somewhere. No, we're speaking about a major group of amphibian, and we are now wondering if actually those guys are actually venomous. So sometimes it's hiding in plain sight, and it has been hiding in plain sight for a long time.
How would an amphibian sort of do the... And how has it not been noticed before? It must be very sly.
Well, yes, we're speaking often about, kind of organisms with subterranean habits or, fossorial habits that tend to be fairly shy and not very noticeable and visible. But then it also takes some curious scientists to actually get some dead specimen, and decide to cut them up and start to really look for venom systems in there. And sometimes those organs are quite small, and their structure can be quite similar to pre-existing structure. So only a specialist would be able to actually make the difference between, sliver glands and venom glands. And then you need a chemical analysis to actually show that the product that is produced by this glandular system you're actually looking at right now is actually producing toxins that will impact the well-being of a potential prey or predator. So it takes some specialty knowledge to actually spot them and know them.
And I suppose with a lot of animals, because their venom is really only produced for, say, like tiny little insects, if they're not a threat to us, we don't notice them so much, right?
No, a lot of people are surprised to learn that all spiders are venomous, that all centipedes are venomous.
All of them?
Literally, for spiders, we're speaking about all but one family. So
how many different individual species would you...
There is about, at the moment, I think 47,000 species of spiders described, and I'd say that pretty much 47,000 species are actually venomous. But they are not all capable of hurting human beings. But that doesn't mean that they're not venomous. In their own microenvironments, at their scale, they are venomous organisms that are using their venom in order to impair their prey. All centipedes, even the tiny centipedes that you find under a stone in your garden, are actually venomous.
What? That makes them so much cooler.
Then you've never wondered about mosquitoes or even, horseflies. All those organisms are venomous as well. How can actually a mosquito drink your blood knowing that blood would actually normally clot very, very quickly? In order to sting you, a mosquito needs to inject you with an anesthetic first, so you do not notice its presence. An anesthetic is a neurotoxic in the first place. It is a toxin that will actually impair the function of your nerve endings. And then it has to inject a nemotoxic into your small capillaries, small blood vessels under your skin, to make sure that your blood will not clot, otherwise its head will be stuck in the wounds and it will never be able to come out. So a simple mosquito has to inject you at least with a neurotoxic and with a nemotoxic.
What? That is so much work for a tiny little thing.
Yeah.
To get its food. And it does it.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That is so amazing. And they obviously have developed it to work on big mammals.
Yes.
And just not to take them down, just the tiniest of little bits.
Yes, because of course you can even wonder then, okay, it's a venom system, but you don't need to kill your prey.
Just get the job done.
Exactly. It's not a question of killing, it's a question of acquiring food. So if your food is blood, just use the tools available to get that blood, but you don't have to actually kill.
How quickly after that was kind of discovered in science, that, you know, mosquitoes and I'm sure lots of other animals do these little things, like with anesthetic, I was really surprised to know that that is one of the functions of it. How quickly after that did we start thinking, okay, maybe venom is something that we could sort of synthesize or extract and put to use?
And that's actually something that is quite paradoxical. On one side, people have been using venom for thousands of years as remedies for different things. For example, the goddess of pharmacopoeia in ancient Egypt was first in the shape of a centipede and then in the shape of a scorpion. So if you do that, if you pick up first the shape of a centipede and then the shape of a scorpion, it's because you know that those organisms produce compounds, produce something that hurts you and can be used for some sickness or disease. So thousands of years ago, 5,000 years ago, that concept was already pretty clear. We know that Native American used centipedes and centipede bites to actually cure arthritis. While at the same time, centipedes are used in Korea, China, Japan to cure arthritis and also stomach ulcer.
How does it cure arthritis? We don't even really have a cure for arthritis now,
No,
do we?
and I actually can't tell you exactly how it functions. There are some papers that were published in Korea, scientific papers, that really look at the efficiency of some centipede venom for arthritis. Yeah, it's something that is used for thousands of years. And then, so you have this in the background that is a continuous use. And it's only recently, in the past 30 years or so, that modern science is really now considering venom as a potential source for new therapeutics. So we have that wealth of products and knowledge that are there, but it's such a new field of research, and it's such a state-of-the-art field. You know, we need such technology to truly understand what's happening within a venom and how the venom then acts on different physiological pathway in human beings, that it's a very new emerging science in that sense.
So we have the folklore that suggests things to us to say, like, maybe it could be used as a pain reliever or an anti-carcinogen or something like that in the body, and then but it takes a hell of a lot to then actually perfect that.
Exactly.
It's something that, wow. Well, I mean, what are we talking here? What kind of tech and experiments need to be done on humans?
All work needs to be done. So we need anything from gathering knowledge from cultures around the world regarding the use of organisms for traditional medicine. So very much a human science kind of work, anthropological work, to really high genetic sequencing and proteinic work to try and really understand what even diversity of venom compounds are available to us. To give you an idea, just for spiders, so I told you we think that about, for the moment of known spiders, probably about 47,000 species are more or less venomous, so virtually all of them. But we think that there is probably over 100,000 species of spiders in the world. So we don't even have discovered half the diversity of spiders in the world. We think that of the spiders we know of now, we think that they produce at least 10 million different peptides, so small chemical compounds with potential therapeutic activity. 10 million. How many have we identified so far? Less than 2,000. Like 2,000 in place of 10 million. The job is huge. The task huge.
How is it even possible to take a guess that there's 10 million potential?
Oh, that was a number that was just thrown by a few scientists that are specialized in spider venom, and that said, well, from the few venom spectra that are available to us, we see that each species produces X number of compounds in average, and that Y number of those compounds are specific to each species of spider. Well, we can more or less estimate so that all spiders in the world produce probably at least 10 million different kind of small peptides with potential therapeutic activities. And we've identified 2,000 so far.
One thing that really excited me the first time we spoke was how much work that you're actually doing in antimicrobial resistance, how venom can be a potential solution to that. Because I suppose that's one of those things where there's a lot of problems on the other side as well. There's a lot of enemies that are out there that may need to be sort of addressed. Is that why venom is so promising?
So venom is actually very promising because, you see, it has evolved potentially in several organisms as well to prevent bacterial infection in those organisms. Now, imagine you are a spider living in a dark, wet cave somewhere in the tropics. So your environment is basically 24 degrees in the cave, 100% humidity, no wind, completely calm and quiet. You eat bugs that are living in that environment, and you move constantly on surfaces so that are coated with bacteria that are living in that perfect environment. Perfect temperature, perfect humidity, complete darkness. It's fantastic. If you are one of these organisms, well, you actually need to deal with those bacteria on a daily basis. And there is a good chance that you've learned how to produce antimicrobial agents to actually protect yourself from all those bacteria around you. And those antibacterial agents are there. We have identified some of them, but there are many, many, many more to identify. A lot more. And each antimicrobial that we can identify is a new ammunition against that threat of antibiotic resistance. Because unfortunately, that idea of constant battle and war that I was speaking about venom earlier, the same thing is true with bacteria and the use of antibiotics. What we're doing is that we have waged war against harmful bacteria, but by doing so, we are selecting for more resistant kind of bacteria, and our arsenal to kill those bacteria is limited to a few dozen products. And by using all those products, we have essentially over the past almost 100 years since Fleming found penicillin, we've selected now for extremely resistant bacteria. So we need to come with new weapons to try and kill them. And of course, after that, we'll need new weapons and new weapons and new weapons. This is an evolutionary battle. It's an evolutionary race. It's a war against other species. So it will not stop. But we do need to come with new solutions. And hopefully venom will hold some of the solution. It's not just a question of killing bacteria like this. It's also a question of making sure that the film that bacteria form to protect themselves from any outside aggression can be destroyed. So, for example, some venom are very efficient for this. That's extremely important to make coatings for I don't know, imagine door handles that will prevent bacteria from surviving. But then think the same thing for hip replacement. The metallic piece that are used, if they're coated with bacteria, that's a direct entry within the body for potentially very harmful infection. What if you can coat that with a venom compound or anything else that will make sure that bacteria cannot even come close to it? You wouldn't even have to wonder if the bacteria is present, because you know that the bacteria cannot survive on that surface.
So rather than we use it just as a treatment when things are already going wrong, we can use it proactively to prevent. Oh, that's so interesting. I mean, I really hope it's not applied in factory farms and that kind of situation, because that is a whole other mess with antibiotic resistance.
This is how we actually select mainly for resistant strain. It is through the farms, and then of course the whole idea of zoonosis that that are transmitted from animals to human beings, and we are in the middle of that anyway at the moment. And yes, it's
so something like 700,000 people a year die already from bacteria that are already resistant to the things that we have in our weaponry.
And we think that in 30 years it may be more 40 million people.
Oh my goodness.
This is actually the figure from the World Health Organization. At least these are the 2017 figures. Maybe they've been updated. But if I remember correctly, the 2017 figures were that by 2050, we could have up to 40 million deaths a year due to antimicrobial resistance. And we really need to address that question. No, please go ahead.
I was just going to ask, so with Venom, is it that there are so many promising attributes to it in different ways that we could continue to, as this sort of as the bacteria gets used to what we're doing to it, there's another one and another one and another one? Or is it that this is a solution that we can embed right now, if we put the funding and the time into it, this is a solution that we could put on the market now, and then we have to find something completely unrelated again further down the line?
The thing is that most likely we'll have to find always something new. And this is intersect to really what life is. Life is evolution. And when we are battling against another organism, we are favoring selecting specific traits in that other organisms. We've done the same thing with mosquitoes, we've done the same thing with bed bugs, we've done the same thing, with different diseases as well, where we have essentially with lice, with fleas, we have selected for the most resistant strain by using certain chemicals. And the only way we can keep those species under check is by using new compounds and new products. We are just forcing evolution, so we won't win it, forever and ever.
Yeah, nature is a battle. The strongest, the survival of the fittest.
Yes, it is a struggle. It is a constant struggle, to use the word of Darwin. It is a constant struggle, and as such, we are not protected from that struggle either. We are very much part of that struggle. We are a product of evolution. We are embedded within that organismal community, and therefore we are in that fight as well. But Venom does provide many tools, maybe not answers yet, but many tools to come with new answers. And that ranges from cancer treatment to microsurgery and the treatment of blood clots, to antimicrobial agents. So there is a spread of potential application there.
You must be very excited for your career to come, all the things that you're working on.
It is very exciting, but it is also it's a little bit the Wild West of animal research. and that means that there is so much to do. You know, you don't really know, should I go towards my right or straight ahead or on the left or anywhere in between, because everything's possible.
I think when just another thing that's occurred to me is when we were talking last, you said that you have built up a sort of hypersensitivity to bees, and that seems like very much the opposite of a resistance. How does that work?
Yes, so what happens is that your body overall, or anybody's body, doesn't like to be in contact to venom. Venom is not something your body likes in the first place. And what happens is that if you are in contact with venom on a regular basis, and especially if it's regular encounters through envenomation, so after a bite or a sting, what happens is that your body gets it the first time and goes like, whoa, that wasn't fun. But shakes itself up and all right, everything's okay. And then no problem for a while. And then boom, another time, wow, I really don't like that. And then a third time and a fourth time and a fifth time. There is a point when your body will just go like, look, I'm not dealing with that thing anymore. I'm gonna throw everything I have at that thing to make it go away, because I really don't like it. And your body just goes in complete overdrive. And for me, who's been working with venomous animals now for almost 20 years, I've been bitten by snakes, I've been stung by scorpions, bitten by spiders, bitten by giant centipedes, and that was all fine. But I was also a beekeeper.
It's so fun.
Yeah, but it's as a beekeeper in the more recent past that I've been stung and stung again and stung again and stung again. And at one point my body just went like, you know what, you and your venom, you just screw you. and I got a massive anaphylactic shock. Within 10 minutes I passed from a happy beekeeper to puking on the floor of my bathroom, unable to move, unable to stand up, trying to explain to the emergency services that they should hurry because I don't know how long I can stay awake. It was fairly impressive.
So it's almost like you had an allergic reaction to it.
Yeah, I had.
Is that the body's form of defense, sort of punish you, say, don't go near this anymore. This is...
Pretty much. What happens is that venom is made out of proteins. And so just like any protein, your immune system at some point can have another reaction to those specific proteins. So for some people it's peanuts, for some other people it's shellfish, and for some other people it's bee venom. And in that case, what happens is that, yes, your body will actually protect itself from what it considers an aggression. But instead of just protecting itself by sending a few, a few white cells and try and deal with a bit of swelling and all this, what it does is that it starts to compartmentalize your body and say, all right, I need to try and save a few main organs, but the rest we need to just drop them. So that's low blood pressure. Low blood pressure because there is something toxic in your body. Let's protect the vital organ by reducing the blood that's actually pumping everywhere. Then we need to protect the airways. If we need to protect the airways, we better block them. And therefore you start to have difficulty breathing. Then, of course, it can be also right, something's not quite right with the digestive tract. So we better purge it. So that means vomiting. Some people it would be diarrhea as well. And also, just your body is just going in override and try and shut parts of it down and otherwise try and protect whatever needs to be protected. But that can also lead, of course, to dramatic end because your body is in override. It doesn't control that cascade of event very well. And you can stop breathing, your blood pressure can go so low that actually your heart can stop, or your brain can decide to actually to stop the function of certain organs like the kidneys, which of course can be terrible as well. So yeah, you have then, or you can also have then a reaction from the immune system that decides to destroy parts of its own flesh because it thinks that that flesh is compromised. Therefore, it's better to get rid of it. Hence necrosis. So you have a plethora of effects, a full cascade that can occur from just one little sting. It didn't take much. One bee sting on my wrist. That's all. One little bee that found the space in my bee suit. And that little organism just managed to take me down. I'm 6'3", I'm over 100 kilo. And that little worker bee took me down. A single one.
Do you still keep bees?
And my family still does. I've moved them to my father-in-law. I still help now and then, but I try and avoid working too close to them now.
Will there be a time, will you be able to build up your immune response to them, or is this kind of it now?
So, without medical help, first, it'd be very difficult to know if it is it or not. In fact, even different studies shows that if you suffered an anaphylaxis from a bite or a sting, so from venom, the range, depending on the studies, of reoccurrence at the next bite or sting is anywhere from 4 to 80%. So let's just say we have no clue. It can be anything. But what's fantastic is that for bee stings, there is what we call apitherapy and immunotherapy. So what can be done is that I can go to my local hospital and I can be injected with microdoses of bee venom. And I am then monitored every time for a couple of hours after that by doctors at the hospital. And through time, over the course of a year, week after week, I can actually slowly build up resistance again to bee stings. And the goal is to reach that threshold where I will be able to survive a bee sting. And hopefully I'll start soon.
Yeah, fingers crossed for you. Okay, so it is all very much linked with resistance and this constant learning on an individual and a species-wide basis.
Yes.
I mean, one thing that has kind of made me curious as well since thinking about having this conversation with you is venom can also be used among loads of different therapeutic uses and also pain relief and stuff like that I've seen. Are people out there using it for recreational drug use? Is there this flourishing hidden black market of people who are shooting up with venom or anything like that?
So at one point, several years ago, there was a very niche market in the Indian subcontinent for scorpion stings. Yes. And it seems that certain scorpion stings could actually make you somewhat high. But as far as I know, venom overall is not the best way to get high. That's for sure. Because the compounds in venom are usually made more to disrupt your vital function. So some may have, fun effects as well, as recreational use. But overall, no, it's just pain and sickness, and it's not much fun.
Which is a shame, because I feel like if there was that, maybe you would have more funding and there would be a lot more understanding of it out there,
Definitely, yes. There would be a much bigger interest. But unfortunately, no.
Yeah.
There are
I'm
some
certainly very-
substances that we can probably learn from. Millipedes, for example, secrete a substance on their exoskeleton, so on their shell, to protect themselves. And this is actually a cyanide derivative compound. And we know that lemur in Madagascar gets high on it. So they grab millipedes, they shake them, make sure they produce a lot of this cyanide compound, rub it on their fur and use it as an insecticide, because the cyanide will actually kill the lice and the ticks and the mites. But then usually after that they shake it a bit more, they lick it, and what we know is that they start drooling, they have blood injected eyes, and they're kind of half falling from their branches, and they seem really happy. So we know
That's
that
incredible.
it does exist in nature. I have giant millipedes in my office. I've never tried.
It gets to 5 p.m. on Friday.
Well, who knows? Maybe, I'm sure I'll have volunteer students. I'll always manage to find one.
Well, let me know how that goes, but don't, yeah, maybe not, maybe test it first or something. But no, I think this is a absolutely fascinating and very much needed topic. We need, like, it seems like you're just scratching the surface, and
Yes.
Yeah, people should watch your TED talk and just get interested by this, because I'm absolutely fascinated. Thank you so much for talking to me.
No, thank you for having me.
Yeah, this has been really, really great. And yeah, thank you.
Cool.
Cool. See you later.
See you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.